Hey, cunts, don't forget to click the subscribe button.
Any man who reads too much and uses his own brain too little falls into lazy habits of thinking.
Who said that?
Albert Einstein.
And what have you been told all your fucking lives? Exactly the opposite, correct? Your whole life has been lived vis-a-vis a myth of losers, pleasers. And you wonder why you haven't got shit. Now, I've known this before I ever found this slide. Because I say, well, what are all the smart, high-performance people that I've had the privilege of being around? What the fuck do they do? And so I just did the same. I copied, I mimicked. And now they call it modeled. I certainly didn't call it modeled when I was starting out. I saw what Costa Grazos did. I never saw him open a motherfucking book. I saw what Bunker Hunt of the Hunt Billionaire Boys before internet did. I'm exaggerating, Bunker, God rest his soul. I'm not sure the fucker could read. But you have been told, you know what the fuck you've been told. That's such a load of hot cock, it's beyond my comprehension. Read 2 books a day if you want to stay poor. We have had kids come to this seminar, and there's a slide coming up, I'm not sure I didn't skip it, where he, after he attended the seminar, he went home and he destroyed his entire personal development library. And it was books from about here to here, as high as this black curtain. And it had all the courses and some of the names you can recognize. And back from when he did just cassette tapes in the old days, you know. I've had people attend this seminar that have spent almost $250,000 in personal development. And this is 15, 20 years ago when it was harder to spend $250,000. Now, I said at the one day, the personal development scam, as I call it, in 2000-ish, about the year, I'd been doing seminars 7 or 8 years by that time, I tried to get a hold of W. Clement Stone, who had founded a company called Combined Insurance, who was a very wealthy guy from Chicago, and he was the guy that came up with positive mental attitude and to be successful because he's trying to train to be high performance, about 10,000 of his insurance salesmen. Most of the great sales gimmicks of life came from insurance. Okay. And so he found Napoleon Hill, who had been, I think, bankrupt the second time by this time, by the early 50s. He had been bankrupt at least twice. And if you want to Google some real horror stories, Google Napoleon Hill's life. I mean, not on the first page of fucking Wikipedia. Go page 20, 30, 40, 50, and put down pedophile, put down lawsuits, put down sexual assault, and you read a whole bunch of great shit about Napoleon Hill. But anyway, so he hires Napoleon Hill, and he brings him to Chicago. Napoleon Hill's more or less destitute. And remember, he had written the book, Think and Grow Rich, in it was published in 1919, right? And it was interesting, Think and Grow Rich was published just after Andrew Carnegie's death. What a fucking coincidence. What a motherfucking coincidence. Anyway, so he hires him. So it's from 1919 to 1950, 51. The Korean War is raging. And W. Clement Stone says, I need a new gimmick to sell whole life insurance. Whole life insurance is where most of the premium goes to commission in the beginning. It's a butt fuck is what it is. Anyway, and they sell it to you, because I sold it. We sold it to you because it's a forced savings plan. Anyway, so they get together, as legend has it, and they spend a few days, and we need something that you can't measure, Clement Stone said. You know, we can't be held accountable. And I don't know which one. In fact, W. Clement Stone, when I talked to him in 2000, 2001, he couldn't remember if Napoleon Hill came up with the idea or he came up with the idea of personal development. You can't measure that. And that's how PD was born. An insurance scam to sell whole life insurance. And just how much money have you and you and you and you and you spent on it? This is bullshit. This is the truth. This is the truth. See, you all want case studies. I told you this yesterday. The industry wants case studies because they think, because if they read how Steve Jobs did it, you can do it like that. But what they're leaving out is you're not Steve Jobs. And what they're leaving out, you're not me. And that's why I had such a hard time, like Atlas Shrugged, pushing this load of shit up the hill for so many years, because it took me 10 years to figure out, and I'm quick, that just because I did it in 4 minutes, nobody's going to buy off on that because they're not me. Now I have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of meatheads like you. And now we're booked up. If I wanted to give seminars from now until I'm 100, probably. Because you can relate to the monkey because you're a monkey. You can relate to the retard imbecile because you consider yourself down deep inside a retard imbecile. Even for the 2 or 3 of you that are cocky in here, I'll knock that cockiness out of you before the week's up, believe me. Because nobody in this room has done shit with their life. Not dick. Does everybody understand not dick? I got an email. Kat just gave it to me a few minutes ago. I'm not going to say his name, but this guy's a real fucking meathead. He came to the seminar October 2019, about 11 months ago. Closed his first deal today, which was yesterday. No payments for 6 months. 95% bank finance. 5% seller finance. SBA. Remember I said you didn't have to put any money in? Remember? No money involved. I hope $1. You got to have consideration. Some of these deals over the years have fallen apart because you didn't give the guy $1, a pound, a yen, something. There's got to be consideration, otherwise it's not considered a transaction. Yep, you better write that down, young lady. That's right. Consideration. Does a hooker fuck you before she gets the money? No. I'm told. Okay. He got $53,000 and some change in working capital. He got a $100,000 line of credit. And I'm happy. Well, maybe it's the first time in his whole life he's happy. It's the first time in his whole life he ever did fuck. And I wish, if I was really cruel like I used to be, in the 90s, we'd put the picture up of the moron. And we'd let you say bad things about him for 2-3 hours. He just did a $106 million deal. He put $15 million in his pocket. And then I look at your expressions on your faces after you slagged him off. But I'm a kinder, gentler now. I'm a grandfather now. Okay. This guy's from Wisconsin. Idaho's near Wisconsin, isn't it? Close enough for government work, right? Okay. See what's in. Ooh, there's this picture. Anyway, I won't show you that. That's not right. Oh, another one. Another deal. Not quite as good. I get them weekly. And although he may or may not ever do a webinar, I can't remember if he could talk English or not. Maybe not. You don't have to talk English. We had a guy from one of the French countries in Africa. What's French speaking in Africa? Who? No, Haiti's not Africa. God, we kind of fucking. Oh, anyway. And I told him it was hard there, if not impossible because of corruption. But you could do it. He moved to the UK, spoke extremely poor English, few words. I get an email with a picture of him during Corona, and I posted it on a black guy, big black guy sitting at a closing table with masks, if you saw my social media posts. Outside London, and you can't speak fucking English. How does a black man who can't speak English close a assisted living deal outside London? How's that possible? Because you don't have to read or write to do this program. Apparently you don't even have to speak English in an English-speaking country. When Gerard said, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easy. He said that 3 times, I think. But many of you, not just you, many of the people that have come to find a way to step on their dick. Every seminar group amazes me to the extent of how innovative they are to step in on their dick. It's beyond my comprehension, and I'm a big, smart guy. But somehow if you've decided in your inner soul that you don't deserve to be wealthy, you'll find a motherfucking way. I guarantee it. You will find a way. Because not everybody believes they deserve wealth. I believe, I don't know why everybody doesn't deserve wealth. I look at it, the other way. Back to the myths of that we will devalue over the week. This is one of my favorites, reading. And how structured are we? Now we read on, I don't know what a Kindle is, but I hear you can read on a Kindle. I don't know what that is, but anyway, a pad, I guess, right? Why? Because you're bored with your life and you don't know what to do, so you fill it with reading. In poor countries like Haiti, the little kids read books that are like 50, 60, 70 years old because they have nothing else. And they form their dreams, not necessarily with aspiration, but dreams based on what they read. Like Gulliver's Travels and those kind of books. But we're beyond that. We have instant communication now with the internet. I don't know how to get all that instant communication. I would be disingenuous if I told you I did, but I know we have it. It's like, we got 1 or 2 six-packers in here that fancy themselves in good shape. Reduced body fat. Well, first of all, reduced body fat begins and ends in the kitchen. What you eat, what you put in your body, what fuel. But if you've got a six-pack, you don't like your job. If you run 100 miles a week, and I used to, you don't like your job. All these things take time. If you're a scratch golfer, I was never a scratch golfer, I was a low single handicap. You're spending way too much time on the golf course. In this country, and I said it at the last seminar, we had people whining on television about losing their down payments on when you take a holiday, and then when they cancel it, unless you have some sort of insurance, which I never heard of that, but insurance, you get your money back. And they're whining because they lost 600 pounds or 300 pounds. And I realize 600 or 300 pounds doesn't mean anything to me, but it means something to somebody, especially when the average person in the United States doesn't have $700 in the bank account. If you take all the excluding the billionaire guys, if you take all the bank accounts and you average, they've got a little less than $700 each per family in the bank. I couldn't believe that. I had one of my crack staff, and I say crack staff because it could be crap staff. I had one of my crack staff follow up the article. $700? Are you fucking kidding me? Last night you saw Reverend Steve, as we used to call him. In one word, how would you describe Steve Jobs? Asshole. Did he change the world? Yes. I thought this seminar just end right there. There is no more. I should have ass on this one and hole over here. And a big question mark here. The choice is yours. What else about Steve? What? I'm going to shove that mic up your skinny little black ass if you don't use it.
He was unreasonable.
Don't confuse me with the facts is one of my favorite sayings. Mine. I'm not interested in the fucking facts. This is how we're doing. I don't care what that study says. I don't care. Historic. We're doing it this way. Yet you want a case study. You want to see how everybody else did it. Because you're afraid of making a mistake, and at least that's why the big companies hire McKinsey's, etc., to write these big reports. So if it does go wrong, they can tell the board, well, at least we paid McKinsey $9 million to tell us to do this. And even though we lost $500 billion, I mean, we got a $9 million piece of toilet paper to cover our butt with. What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
He didn't use the word if. It was, I'm gonna put music in your pocket. He didn't say if.
What else? Yes, ma'am. Now, if I said the same thing to this young woman that I just said to the little skinny black kid back there, I would get 10,000 feminist fucking emails. Go ahead.
He didn't let people tell him that he couldn't. And he didn't accept defeat. So he didn't hear like any type of negativity when he was trying to produce something or his expectations of someone. So he wanted it, he wanted the way that he wanted it, and he wanted you to do it now, right then, no excuses, nothing.
And I'm told, and I told you I did some work for them back in the 80s, and I'm told that he was that way from the time he was a little child, he wasn't interested in anybody else's opinion. And I can relate to that quite a bit, actually. And he always thought that he was an alien that was dropped here amongst morons. Bill Gates, I'm told, believes similar. Elon Musk believes similar, and I can go down the list. Dating back to Henry Ford I. He says, when I ask my staff for an idea, it comes with a pair of hands. That means the idea is in the brain, but it comes with a person. I just want the idea. I don't need the pair of hands, is what old man Ford said. And I can relate to that. One of the reasons that I stopped the comments on my YouTube, for those of you that may or may not have noticed, is I went back and studied them for some period of time. And the questions have not changed, other than Corona, have not changed 1% in several years. Same questions over and over and over. Now, to the credit of my marketing people, different people are reading them now than read them 5 years ago. But the point is, all the questions are answerable from my website. Rarely, and the reason I rarely comment is because all the questions are answered on my website. So meathead here, Asian meathead, watches YouTube. Fires question. Instead of Asian meathead looking at my site, then watching YouTube, then there are no questions. What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
He was an orphan, so he had abandonment issues, which led him to treat his daughter the same way, but also led him to seek a father figure in his CEO and mentor.
Two other myths. One, adopted children can develop normally. Wrong. Second myth, single parenting works. Wrong. I can go down the list. And why do we say adopted people can have normal development? Because some psychiatrists or psychologists who wanted to write a book that was to be liked said it was okay. Because a majority of the people he thought or she thought were going to be adopted that bought his book. The beginning of the end of mankind, in my opinion, happened in 1969 when the book I'm Okay, You're Okay came out. I'm Okay, You're Okay. And it was by a psychiatrist named Stein. And he basically said the premise of the book is whatever you do is okay, and I accept you for what you are and who you are and what you do, and whatever I do, you do the same. And the guys on Wall Street used to laugh and say, I'm okay, you're okay, cha-cha-cha. Because it was a joke. The book was written like a fucking joke, but because of you people that read 2 books a day, contrary to what Einstein said, it was a bestseller, and that was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of the end. Because everything you do, asshole, isn't okay. And if you think so, you better get super rich and go live on a fucking island in the middle of nowhere where you're not affecting anybody. If that were the case, then you could never default on a loan. I'm okay, you're okay. And I mean, the absurdity of it is beyond comprehension. What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
He claimed himself to be the conductor of the orchestra.
Correct. You will be the conductor of the orchestra. But of the 25 or 30 different financial tools that are available today, there's only one that we push, and beyond seller's finance, and that is commercial debt. And if commercial debt isn't covered by existing debt service, and tomorrow and the next day we're going to talk about how you structure the finance in these corona times, which is barely different than how we structure it in pre-corona, but we start with 100% seller finance, and we work our way down from that. But that's the first words out of your mouth, 100% seller finance. And you can close a 100% seller finance deal in 48 hours. Not even 48, 4 hours. 4 hours. 4 minutes. Because the bank is the thing that slows you down in the financing. The bank. And depending on the size of the loan, the bank, its credit committee, its underwriting committee, yada, yada, yada. This all takes time, unfortunately. And SBA are slower. For those of you that are going to use the SBA, and I highly recommend the SBA program in America, is that you got to realize you're going to add at least 3 or 4 weeks onto the credit cycle. 3 or 4 weeks. So when you're getting these letters of LOIs, letters of intent, signed, and it only says 30 days, that's a joke. Your LOI should at least be 90 days. And during that LOI period, you're supposed to have exclusivity. But a lot of sellers, even though they signed that, they're trying to peddle it to somebody else. That's just part of the game. Okay, what else about Steve? Yes, sir.
Master salesman.
Master?
Salesman.
They're all salesmen. And remember, like I ranted and raved yesterday about this time yesterday, or not sometime yesterday, about you not wanting to be a salesman. We had a clinical psychiatrist come through here a few years ago, and he was German. He sounded like Freud. He had a German. Actually, Freud was, I believe, Austrian, but that kind of accent. And he says, and he comes from, his grandfather was a psychiatrist, his grandmother was a psychiatrist, his mother and father were psychiatrists, and 2 of his 3 sisters were psychiatrists. And he said, all of them are rolling over in their grave now. They think I'm just going to be a filthy fucking salesman. And then He said it again, a super rich, filthy fucking salesman. And I'm sure they did roll over to the extent that there is any knowledge passed to the grave. He was third generation psychiatrist. What else about Steve?
He believes he's always right and never share his doubt to other people.
Now, these characteristics that we're describing both for Kroc and the founder last night, and the night before last, and Steve Jobs last night. If we used to do this, but then we realized it didn't do any good. We used to do a personality profile of the traits that you liked in the guys and gals that we study, not the webinars. And then I'd ask you, let's say that you came up with 7 traits. How many of these 7 traits do you have? The ones that you picked. The universal answer is none. Not any. 0. Go down the road. Yet these were the things that differentiated this high-performance person. In many cases, they're icons. You picked the characteristics. I didn't. Normally, 50% of the characteristics you kids would pick, I wouldn't pick. Because those are norms for me. Those aren't high-performance benchmarks for me. I've done almost all of them all my life. So once in a while, one would come out. So you know. You know in yourself. Now, Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple with Steve, is a mentee of one of my mentees. One of my high-performance superstars, well, Hall of Famer, mentees with the Woz. So we have, in the slides that you're going to get, I may or may not go over them during the seminar, you're going to see correspondence from the Woz vis-a-vis Steve. And what he thought of the world, himself, which is pretty obvious what he thought of himself, the world, and some of the other iconic gurus. And but I mean, the Woz said he always was about himself. I always wanted to be like. I never took lead on the projects because then I'd have to fire somebody or I'd have to tell somebody that the idea didn't work. Steve always took the lead. Wasn't concerned about whether he had to tell somebody it was a shit idea or having to fire somebody. And a great scene in the movie, if I remember, because there's 2 Jobs movies that we play. You only see one this time. They were going to go public. And he walks by a desk and they were structuring the share structure, how it's going to be preferred stock or common stock, this, that, and the other thing. And that there was a list of people that had been with Steve, I don't know, 5, 7, 8 years, whatever. And there was a list of people, 11 or 12. And he says, those 7 aren't going to get any shares. So from the 4th guy on, contrary to what apparently they had been told, and they worked for nothing for all those years, they're not going to get any shares. It's like the handshake deal for Ray Kroc. Handshake deals are still around, and I have a couple, but for the most part, they're dead. The handshake is only good when it's convenient to the one person. Rarely is it convenient to both of you down the road. Anything else about Steve? The other thing you saw was, oh yes, go ahead.
He didn't want to give credit to the engineers he thought were B players because he didn't want to discourage the A players.
He didn't want to give credit to the engineers, which were
the engineers who created the Apple II.
okay, yeah, but I mean, but those he didn't consider. In your opinion, he didn't consider those A players.
No, and he said it.
Well, I mean, engineer. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, Steve didn't write code. I mean, he wasn't an engineer. That That may or may not be. I'm not sure about that. Now, the other thing you saw was what? Dan. Well, everybody knows about him. We don't have to. Other than that, I trained him. When he came to me when he was 23 years old from Vancouver, he had pimples on his face. He was pudgy. And I teased him. He was wearing his brother's suit, his older brother's suit. He doesn't have an older brother, but that's what it looked like. He was wearing somebody else's suit. And he flew from Vancouver to Los Angeles to meet with me, and we met a couple hours, and I gave him some, this was 2003. I gave him some instructions, and he's done well, but it's interesting. When I went to speak at a seminar a year and a half ago or so, now everybody in the audience wasn't Asian. I exaggerate and I say they're all Asian, but it's a better story if they're all Asian. Anyway, but they weren't all Asian, but they were 50, 60% of them were Asians. And and so now there's 3 or 4 guys that are, he's not a mini-me, he doesn't do what I do, although he came back to the seminar and he came back to the hardcore because he is now, realizes he's getting to the age of what do I do? I'm not going to do this the rest of my life. How do I sell it? Well, Dan can't sell his business because it's Dan. Brian Rose can't not sell his business because it's Brian. And I've got 5 or 6 other guys that really can't sell their business because their name, them as individuals, are the brand. And so if you're going to, and if you want to be philanthropic in this, when you decide to stop working, just walk away from your business. If you don't want to do that, then you've got to build something. And so now almost all the mini-me's are working on QLA roll-ups in one form or another. And rolling up digital shit is hard because it's extremely difficult to price, and we're going to talk about the pricing the day after tomorrow, not just the digital, but businesses in general. Rarely does cash flow cover debt service in a digital business, rarely. Occasionally, and that's where the seller is financed. So if Dan were to sell his business and he would take a note back for 50%, I'm not putting words in your mouth because Dan and I haven't had this discussion, or Brian would do the same, or some of the other guys would do the same. It'd be a lot easier to sell the business. Any questions about Mr. Jobs other than one final point? When we asked you to put the characteristics years ago when we did it this way, and then we follow you, what you said, what you did, no correlation. What you say in here has no correlation with what you're going to do outside. I'm going to say it again slow. What you say in here to me, to the group, has no correlation to what you're going to do outside. Because you're saying shit in here to be liked. Even though I'm telling you, I don't like it either way, but you're saying things to be part of the group. You're saying things to be accepted. Some of you haven't said anything all week. So far, I don't give a shit if you say anything. Some of you will sit here all week and not say anything. That's fine. But there's zero correlation. Zero. Talks cheap. Takes money to buy whiskey. Talks cheap. And most people have lived their life that they can say anything because nobody holds them accountable. I talked about outcome results yesterday, Netflix and Siemens. I told you that if you give the weekly report to your employees, half will quit the first 2 or 3 weeks. The other half will quit, as soon as they find a job. Because to date, you have not held them accountable. And them turning in sales figures is not accountability. For those of you that are in sales, you see what the sales are and the people that report to you that produce the sales, but that's not accountability. Accountability is you tell them that you got to do X, and for every % less than X, it comes out of their salary. Sales will go up automatically, and I guarantee it. That's why commission salesmen that are strictly 100% commission are more productive than base salary plus commission. Same thing, you put a gun to your favorite kid's head, somehow you get it done. Anything else for Steve? Okay. You've heard me talk about two cases for me personally about expectations. Peña, a young man like you, ought to close everybody. Peña, a young man, we have to move 250 units a month. 200 is our minimum, and how I perform. Okay. I mentioned yesterday Thomas is performing against my expectations of him. And he'll probably be the fastest growing company in Canada this year, and as he said, and he's got a good chance of being the fastest growing company in North America next year. Now, how do those compare to your own expectations of yourself? There's no comparison whatsoever. In fact, there's probably a negative correlation, because your alligator mouth has overloaded your hummingbird ass more than once. I can speak with great pride that my alligator mouth has overloaded my hummingbird ass more times, I should be used to anal sex by now. Because you've been taught that's boastful, have some reserve, all the things that your mommy and daddy told you about you. But you set high expectations, and the kids will perform. And it doesn't take 3 months or 6 months to figure out if the kids are performing or not. I was screaming yesterday, I know in 3 minutes or 3 hours, whatever. And I do. Because I can see in the eyes of the employees, the managers, the board members, whether they have confidence in whether they're going to perform or not. But it's about expectations. And when you do put together a high-performance team, and by accident a low performer slips in, you make a mistake, they'll quit. They'll quit. Why? Because of peer pressure. You're slowing us down. You won't have to worry about firing people. They'll quit. They'll quit.
This game we're in is all about self-confidence. When you get it, and not arrogance, you got to fight arrogance, but confidence to try things new, to do things that you wouldn't have dreamt you had, get praise from trying things and failing. I had every break in the world. I was lucky. Luck plays a big part in all this. You take the right bounce or the wrong bounce and you don't make out. But I think it's all about confidence. You go into new situations and you carry your weight in the conversation or the game. That gives you another notch. You get a degree, you get an advanced degree, another notch. Each is a building block. Each experience is a building block. And when you're successful at each one, and you fail some, you'll learn from that. But you build this moat of self-confidence, and it carries the day most of the time. It's a wonderful, lucky thing to have. And you get it from teachers, you get it from parents, you get it from experience after experience. And every time you get it, it's another notch on the belt.
And the corollary to that is when you haven't tried anything, you have no confidence. And in some cases, you have negative confidence. And those people find it an easier way to step on their dick and fuck this up. Now I say, and Sally asked me, not if I was telling the truth, but kind of was I telling the truth. I can't remember the last time I failed. can't remember. I thought about it last night, in between my affirmations and my prayers. You think, now if I was a meathead like in the audience, I can remember last time I got beat up, because I lost a lot of fights, but I was willing to fight anybody. I can't remember. It must have been in the early 80s, though. Now you take that against you. There's a reason why I'm standing up here. There's a reason why I've been here 35 years. Okay, YouTube.